never easy to guess what he will play, because as you say, he plays everything.
Should we have a quick guess, guys, before he makes the first move?
I think it's going to be one of these annoying moves. I think he'll try to not play into the main lines, and so we might see something like
C4.
Oh,
C3.
Oh.
This is the key move against Magnus age 10. Yeah, this is the move that beats the mouse slip variation. He tried to play the English, he slipped, and he's played C3.
Is it an annoying opening move?
It's not an amazing first move because it doesn't really increase your options as white. Now we're transposing into pretty much a queen's pawn opening, but white hasn't gone for the most direct, kind of most ambitious attempts. White hasn't really seized space, white hasn't really developed any pieces, but as Simon mentioned, this is a bit of a secret nugget of information if you want to beat Magnus H10 on the app. 1c3. Simon used it. Simon actually mouse slipped, but beat the app. And then I used it to win as well. So he's got a good track record. Maybe Magnus has been watching your games.
Yeah.
Trying to beat himself at age 10. So.
I don't even know what an app is. I'm that old.
And I guess they're not using the apps in prison either.
Half an apple.
No,
All about the old-fashioned way with the board and the books.
Yeah, the board and the books. You can't beat books. I love books. I think David once, I was watching one show and you said something like, you know, if you've got books and you write it down, people can't hack into your books.
Yeah.
And that's actually a golden nugget of information. You write your own notes and things. I mean, I like that idea.
Yeah.
We must keep books.
And they smell nice.
And they smell nice.
You know, and they look good in your house, don't they?
I was going to say as well.
If you read them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't.
Exactly.
There's so many chess players I know. Again, I think I mentioned this, but you go around their house and they've got 100 books, but they haven't really opened any of them. But it makes them look clever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we should do a quick like survey around the table. So, how many chess books do you guys have?
I've got loads, honestly.
And have you read? Like, would you say you've read more than 50% of them?
I'll be honest. No. I haven't even read my own books more than 50%.
But they are reference, of course. I've got over 1,000, and as Susie will tell you, I keep on making more room for mine. And she said, where have all my books gone? And I say, well, mine are reference books. Yours are novels. You know? Mine are important, but...
Academia.
There it is.
They're for your work.
But of course, people who don't play chess get confused because they look at the library and they say, this book says How to Win with the Sicilian, big, thick book. And then this book says... How to beat the Sicilian. Which one do you read? I mean, it's ridiculous. This is black.
That can get frustrating.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you like ask me how the percent on my books, chess books, it's 100. But I only have 2 chess books.
Oh, you got a couple more now.
So I need 2. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But these are exactly the kind of chess books that I read.
That's a reference book, of course, that one. But somebody did say a great thing. I mean, I know I joke about getting older, but you assess things and think, I don't need all these books. And I've gone through many times that I'll get rid of loads. I can't get rid of them. I can't choose which ones. They've got sentimental value. But you really, if you really thought about it, do you need more than 10 chess books? Ever? And the other thing I would say is there one book? I still can't, after decades, think, if I was on a desert island, what one chess book could I take that goes, this is chess? This is everything I need in one book. It doesn't exist. Surely it doesn't exist.
Not yet.
Not yet.
One of us needs to write it.
This is it. There it is.
No, No, I'm always trying to slimline my chess collection. And like you, I have problems, but I've kind of become a little bit more comfortable with the idea of giving away, if I can give them away to chess clubs. And I've kind of promised to give away a lot of my chess books to Bergen's chess club, which is my local chess club. Yeah, but the problem is like I haven't been there. My apologies. I'm sorry.
It's been COVID.
I'll go there.
It's been COVID.
Yeah.
And actually, if there is one book that describes the whole of chess, of course, Simon, it is Chess and Fishing.
Best book you can get. It's very rare, though, apparently. I mean, you'll struggle to find it, but if you do find it, you'll join me. We have one of the only copies in the world.
Yeah.
Chess and
so Simon did tease us, and he invented a book called Chess and Fishing, and we all believed it.
Excellent.
Written by...
Well.
I did.
Von Winkle.
Von Winkle.
Two of us believed it. One of us was going, hang on a second. And afterwards I texted him. I was like, Simon, what do you mean the Chess and Fishing by Van Winkle? But then he coined a term, the Knight's Stable.
Yeah, we got the knight stable in there. So, yeah.
And is this a stable position? We do see the knight moving, David.
It's very stable, and both players have spent a bit of time. So we have seen a very strange first move from Magnus, pawn to c3 on move 1. It's a rare opening. I don't even know the name of it, to be honest, but we have transposed into a variation of the Trompovsky attack. You could argue maybe it's a Torre kind of system as well. There's a couple of names for this type of position, and OK, the position is becoming a bit more normal. We did see a trade of pawns in the centre. Now Sam is going to push the pawn in front of the black king 1 square, I assume, and we'll see the play take maybe a slower course. This pawn structure is called the Carlsen structure, and it arises from the Queen's Gambit, the Caro-Kann openings like this one as well. So they will be using pattern recognition to understand where the pieces belong, maybe which pieces to trade off. And there we go. Sam does push a pawn forward, opening up the black dark square bishop. And
I've seen Magnus win a lot of positions like this when he played the London system. He won a famous game against the Polish player Wojciech, where he normally does a combination of 2 things. He tries to win the light square bishop with a knight to the edge, and he also tries to hit black's b pawn with a queen move. Maybe we can show, well, David's pointing out those moves there. And both of these moves are a little bit annoying for black, because he has to sort of somehow defend. So it's these little strategies. When you play an opening, you need to know what you're trying to achieve. And I expect that knight will want to come to the edge if he gets a chance.
Yeah, so he's pushed his bishop forward 1 square, and as you mentioned, Simon, this is kind of the kind of sister variation of the London system, which would be a direct transposition. If White's bishop was back here, it would be the London system directly. But yeah, next move, if, for example, black does the same and develops, I think we'll see your move in action. The white knight going to the edge of the board, trying to capture this bishop, and at the very least, you've imbalanced it slightly by gaining the bishop pair, a knight for bishop trade. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sam, in the current position, maybe tries to find a way out of that. Maybe he'll push his pawn forward, asking a question of this bishop, so that if the bishop retreats, then at least his own piece has an escape square. But yeah, some calculation to be done. Maybe if this pawn does indeed step forward attacking this bishop, we'll see a trade. And then the other idea you mentioned, the white queen coming over to attack this undefended pawn. So Magnus, he's got a lot of experience in this type of position, maybe not this exact position, and it's up to Sam. What is he going to do here? Where is he going to put his bishop? Which side is he going to castle the black king? You could make an argument for, OK, he does play that move, the most natural move in the position. And yeah, black's king can choose which flank to castle on later in the game. So, OK, the bishop has been kicked away and the bishop's stepping back. Now, an escape square. And black's pieces, very harmonious. Ivanka, you must have had this type of position in the Caro-Kann as well. Very similar to structures there.
Many, many times. I have to say, though, it does feel like this is a nicer position than I would normally get in the Caro-Kann.
For black? Yeah.
For black, because the light square bishop is comfortably out. It's a great diagonal. Dark square bishop is also on a great diagonal as well. I just, you know, and the reason I kind of highlight those 2 pieces is that the dark squared bishop controls the e5 square, which is a square that the whites usually use as a springboard to start a kingside attack.
Yeah, normally White's knight wants to, whoops, sorry, me and my arrows. The white knight wants to jump into this square. And normally this is, yeah, this is a beautiful square for the white knight, but it's not possible right now. And we also mentioned Keith Arkle, the endgame expert. He loves these types of positions for black because he's going to try and enact something we call the minority attack, the black rook coming across, and these 2 pawns actually running forward to undermine these 3 white pawns. So if black gets the chance, he's going to push forward and create the minority attack, trying to weaken white structure on this flank, at least create a target for later on in the game. So watch out for that one. Maybe Sam will play this move already, bring the rook across. Lots of choice and very comfortable for Shankland already.
But he spent quite a lot of time. I guess we're only in move 11. We still have almost all of the pieces on the board.
Yeah.
And he is thinking a lot.
Yeah, we talked about openings in general and endgames being the more fun part, right? Magnus just wants to take this into the middle game, the endgame. He doesn't care about going for an opening advantage with white. And OK, starting the minority attack potentially. Black's rook getting ready to throw the black pawns down the board. And Magnus, very typical Carlsen-esque move, stops that idea.
And Magnus, of course, he also has Chessable courses. He has 2, I think. One is on the strategy of the world champion, the way he thinks, and one is on the end game. So I guess that is the Chessable course for you as well then, Carl.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded also that a prisoner wrote to me saying why he liked pawns so much. He said, because in the prison yard or in the school playground, when the big guy, the knights or the bishops or the rooks, have a go at the little guy usually loses. But in chess, when the little guy attacks the big guy has to move, and the little guy wins.
Yeah, that's
We like that.
I like it.
That is true. But talking about little guys, I mean, I was just shocked actually by the decision that Sam Shankland just took, you know, picking up Gary and moving it 2 squares and just, well, leaving some squares open for his king.
Suddenly the black king, really airy.
Really, really shaky, and that's very, very committal.
And now catch up, because there have been a few moves, lots of trades here, knights coming off the board, bishops coming off the board, and maybe with the exchanges, black's king is less of a target because white doesn't have any attacking ammunition anymore. But OK, the white knight stepping back, hitting the black bishop, and black's bishop is just going to retreat. You mentioned you were shocked by this, Ivanka, but the black king, pretty safe for now?
It is pretty safe for now, but I just think it's such a committal decision.
It's very
ambitious. It wasn't necessary, if you ask me. I mean, you know, you could have played other plans and waited with this idea until...
Personally, I quite like it, I must say, because you've gotten rid of 2 of white's main pieces. You mentioned occupying this square, for example, for white, one of the main goals. That's not really going to happen anytime soon. If we just see, I mean, maybe we'll see a trade of bishops at some point. White might try to exchange off black's only defender, but yeah, I don't really see how white's going to build an attack. White only really plays on the king side in this position. White never really touches pawns on this left side of the board because he only leaves weaknesses behind that black can use on a semi-open file. So if white is restricted to one side of the board, it makes it kind of makes some sense to exchange pieces. And yeah, I mean, I think black is super flexible. Black can even break in the center at some point. I'm not saying black's better, but I think he has no real problems here.
Yeah, I don't like it. I like my safe king.
It's a contradiction, Ivanka. You love pushing pawns, so why not this pawn push?
I know. I'm very fickle. You know, it's someone else's positions, and I don't know. I would have felt a little bit more comfortable with my king not being so airy, and Magnus actually pushing forward with Alice, the A-pawn, to the 5th row. And this is actually a plan that I've seen in very recent years. Maybe in 2020, it became very, very popular to take as much space as possible on this wing. And White's idea is to just, you know, put a knight on the C5 square and then, you know, just carry on taking space.
It's a very Magnus position, isn't it? I mean, you talk about kind of position that Magnus plays better than anyone in the history of chess. It's this kind of position where, yeah, maybe it's even, maybe it's even. I do actually still like white a little bit because I think his plan's maybe a little bit easier to play, but it should be even. But Magnus just knows all the right plans. And here he goes, he starts to manoeuvre around. But Sam's playing very ambitiously with this pawn move, so it shows at least he's going for some activity as well. Where's that knight going? I mean, I would have moved that knight the other way and try to bring it to the centre, like D3. So I'm thinking, OK, is it heading towards the right-hand side, David? Possibly. It looks weird to me, that move. But
is the idea to perhaps just trade off bishops?
But I thought if he goes to B3, it has a better route, the knight. Maybe we could show that, like either there or even back to C1, and I want to try and bring it to the centre. So I'm surprised that the white knight went that way. Yeah,
this is actually the dream square, for example, just giving white a few moves here. This structure, the Carlsen structure, as they call it, you can actually search that, I think, as well on Chessable, where you have 2 pawns. They act as a perfect shield for the white knight, and the white knight is flexible to jump towards the black pawns on this flank or to jump towards the centre. So, as Simon mentions, that traditionally is the ideal square for the white knight. So it is slightly surprising to see Magnus go the other way. And from this square, it actually takes 4 moves to get back to the ideal D3 post. So he's not going in that direction, definitely. And maybe that means he's going... OK, no, Magnus continuing to play on both flanks. He kind of keeping us guessing, keeping his opponent guessing. Maybe the white knight is going towards this side to start annoying the black king. But first, Magnus kind of begins by undermining this black pawn. I don't think you want to trade pawns here because it only opens up the white rook. And also you're left with this one isolated pawn. The downside is if you bypass white's pawn, then any endgame now is going to be very dangerous for black. This pawn is only 2 squares away from promotion. If you can imagine white's knight, I know it's on the other side of the board right now, but if the white knight picked itself up and plonked itself here, maybe in an endgame, going after black's pawn, then it would be really dangerous. I've seen Magnus win countless endgames once his pawn gets this far forward. So, yeah, Magnus teasing us, teasing his opponent, maybe going for the black king, maybe going for something on the queen side as well. We will see. For Sam, he needs to find an active plan. Black's pieces are nicely centralized, but what to do next? That's the big question.
Yeah, will Magnus even go for the attack? I mean, I'm looking at moving the f-pawn at the right moment. It looks, I don't know, it looks a little bit odd, but, you know, when you have weakened your king, as black has done, you should always try to look at the targets over there and see how you can open up the position. So if I was white, I'd be looking at trying to use a lever. Levers, we've seen them before. We saw Prag use the lever against Magnus when he used the g-pawn, and maybe we can just highlight that pawn at some point, potentially coming forwards. I mean, it looks a long way off, but maybe we could go f4 and try this move.
You need to prepare it, but maybe this pawn forward or harry the h-pawn forward just to undermine this stronghold for black.
I was actually going to ask you about this move. As you know, this kind of gives an opportunity to trade off a bishop for the knight. What do you think?
I don't think I would, personally.
I don't think he'll ever really take it. He's hinting at it. And I think it's more that this is an outpost for his pieces, and it's an annoying outpost. He wants to destabilize black's pieces along this diagonal.
He's also stopping Sam doing anything, because the one pawn break Sam has is that e-pawn in the centre of the board. And he's basically, Magnus has ruled out this push now, because then you can take the knight off the board and you just win a pawn. So maybe Magnus's idea, stop black's play, build up slowly. OK, Sam's trying to build that move up again there with his last move, but if you can stop your opponent's counterplay, well, it's half of the way to winning.
Yeah, and this pin is annoying, but for now, black can deal with it. For example, if the white queen comes out, try and add pressure on this diagonal, black's rook will just come back and guard the black knight. And the reason I say I don't think any trades will happen here is because, OK, even if the queens come off, suddenly white's knight is just on a terrible square, dominated by the black bishop. Black's bishop controls a lot of squares right now. So I think Magnus just wants to use his pieces to annoy black more than anything. In the current position, I wouldn't be surprised if he brings his queen out to the one side and then starts to maybe bring this rook to the center, maybe by lifting his rook up and doubling up on this file, or maybe just centralizing his rook first of all, in case black does try and break at the wrong moment. Yeah, really tense, really strategic middle game, and chances for both sides, but who knows who's better? Who knows who will kind of navigate this type of position?
I mean, you could go for this knight check and move the h-pawn if you want to go completely sort of randomly attack with just your knight and pawn. Yeah. So it doesn't look like it should work, but I mean, there's some weird ideas like that floating about as well. So yeah, you know, it's always really interesting watching Magnus play his position, because I wouldn't have expected white Magnus to put his knight over here. So what's his plan? I'm kind of still a bit like, oh, I don't know, maybe that knight should be in the centre, but yeah, we'll see.
I mean, if it was anyone other than Magnus, I would maybe be slightly critical that he's being inconsistent, kind of playing on one side, brought his knight to the king side, and then kind of playing on the other flank. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the next few moves. Maybe he's got a big master plan up his sleeve that we've struggled to see yet. Maybe you're right, Simon. Maybe he'll suddenly launch some attack against the black king, but it doesn't feel like the black king is too...
It seems very solid.
Yeah, right now. Yeah,
very hard to attack it with just the knight. But you know, you can maybe again try to stretch black a little bit. Your idea, David, of doubling rooks seems very sensible as well. I think here, but
lots of twists. And
still prefer white. I think. Ivanka, would you take white here? Or?
I like white. I just think this is the Magnus type of positions. And you were also talking about pawn breaks. I'm also very tempted to not just soften up the pawns on the right side, but also maybe try to have it all and maybe even at the right time prepare a pawn break in the middle of the board. And we can see on the camera that Sam isn't actually that happy either. He's shaking his head.
Yeah. That's the thing. If Sam kind of could control his emotions a bit more, I think he would maybe even already be top 20, top 10 in the world, maybe. He's been a phenomenal player for so long now. Just one established 27-plus player, but I think he could go even further. Just sometimes it's the moments like that. Whenever I've played him, sometimes I just notice he's not happy, and that just gives me a confidence boost. And I've played against that a few times to beat him even. And
do you think psychology is very, very important then? Because you're mentioning there, it's helped you beat Sam in the past, and that's psychology, really, realising your opponent's weak, giving yourself energy. I mean, I think it's a really underrated thing in chess in general. Not many books are written about psychology, and at the end of the day, it's a mind sport, right? So it must be important.
I know it's something he's worked on. He's much better, much more stable, kind of, much more kind of focused now than he used to be. I mean, one of his coaches, Jakob Agard, one of the greatest chess authors out there, chess coaches, and that's something they've worked on, the psychology. But yeah, it can always be improved, right? Nobody's perfect. Nobody's completely oblivious to all external factors. Meanwhile, he's shaking his head.
You live and you learn it.
Sorry?
Nobody's perfect, you live and you learn it. It's a song by Hilary Duff or something. Oh, wait, it's Miley Cyrus. It's Hannah Montana. Yeah. Oh. Yep. That's my favorite TV show.
I'm surprised you don't know that, Simon.
Who? So, Disney, I know Disney.
Yes.
Yeah, I got, Okay.
All right, well, calm game so far.
Yep.
We're waiting for it to maybe explode open a little bit.
It will at some point,
just
not quite yet. Magnus needs to stumble across a plan.
Well, Anish Giri, he is finished for today, a draw and 1 point for him against Shakhriyar Mamdyarov, also then 1 point for Mamdyarov. So it is a very solid and good start to the tournament for Anish Giri. He has won now 3 games. The other one's draw. No one has been able to beat Anish Giri, and he is safe inside top 8 so far, with 2 days to go in the preliminaries. The opening expert.
Yeah, and talking about Mamdyarov, actually, I would love to see a Chessable course from him, especially on his creative openings. You know, the way he just pushes Gary, the G-pawn, 2 squares with carefree abandon. Doesn't move 3.
It's always against the Queen's Gambit declined. He always finds a way to attack against one of the most solid openings in chess.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Just like an attacking manual from him, you know, that would be incredible to see how his brain thinks. Talking about chess spectacles that you were saying, I would love to get into the mind of these great creative attackers.
Well, every time I look at a game, if I tune in and it's 2/3 of the way through the game, his pawns are sort of come down the board, and you think, how did they even arrive there?
It's like
and he does it time after time.
It's like Space Invaders.
Exactly like that.
Maybe you will be surprised, because actually we haven't been able to follow any. We have only seen slightly some of Mamdyarov's games, but actually he lost 1 game to Mishra, and he won 1 game to Shankland. All the other 1 draws. Okay. A little bit surprising. He usually has a lot of decided results, Mamdyarov. Maybe.
Not typical of him.
No.
No, but we did actually see in the Oslo Esports Cup, you know, that when push comes to shove, he can play in a really positional way. I mean, we saw him do it's become basically an endgame grinder in the style of David, and he did that to Jordan, and it was very impressive.
And he won the final match to Magnus Carlsen as well.
He outplayed Magnus in an endgame. That's not seen every day.
No.
Very few people outplay Magnus in an endgame.
Yeah.
And this one, will this go to an endgame? Will the queens come off?
I think so.
Possibly.
I think this is good chances for an endgame.
I'm just struggling to understand, firstly, what Sam is shaking his head about so much over the last few minutes, but also what Magnus has been thinking about for nearly 7 minutes now. I don't see too much to calculate. I understand he's trying to kind of decide upon a plan, but 7 minutes in this position.
Could it be something like push Harry? I mean, are they thinking about making some kind of committal move?
Going on the attack.
He's going for it. I mean, I thought he could check and push Harry, definitely with a knight, but maybe he's aiming for something similar with this move, like the F-pawn or the H-pawn, trying to do something along those lines,
Yeah, so Magnus, after over 7 minutes, brought his queen to this square, and as Simon says, maybe pushing this pawn forward, maybe pushing this pawn forward, kind of keeping his options open, but he's also trying to provoke Sam forward. So Sam now, it's very tempting to push this pawn to hit the white queen, but the white queen might even step back. I mean, the whole way, anywhere, safe, and even if black starts pushing, white, I think, is happy to have seen, yes, white's lost a lot of time, but white is happy to have seen this pawn push forward, because now at some point, I know black can try and attack. I know this is a bit scary, but if black is just a bit too slow and just waits, for example, then after a trade of minor pieces, white has a new outpost in the middle of the board. White has control over this beautiful dark square. also going towards the the black king, sorry. So I think pushing this pawn at the moment is maybe a bit too risky for black because you lose control over the e5 square. It's something that we touched upon earlier. Pawns don't move backwards, but Harry, the h-pawn, does move forwards.
Yeah, this is a very interesting move. I mean, Sam is certainly playing very aggressively, and it sets up a bit of a trap here, right? If white now takes that pawn, I guess. I mean,
it's complicated.
It's complicated still, but can you take the pawn?
The whole idea is that if white grabs this pawn after some trades, suddenly the white queen is hit, and the black queen, he's going for it.
He's taken it.
Magnus must have calculated this in advance. It looks like black is about to win. If the white queen steps back, the black queen dives into the position and takes this pawn, protected by her rook now. But it's just one check. The white king can actually run away. And suddenly the rest of black's position is a bit loose. This pawn under fire. Suddenly, remember this pin? The black queen's been deflected away from her own knight.
Very risky.
Yeah,
very risky way for. I mean, this is kind of on Magnus-like to change it so in such a big fashion when he didn't need to, the position, and give his opponent. I mean, black has some kind of attack here, surely.
Surely, yeah.
Surely, yeah. Surely, you know, even at the worst case scenario, the queen can kind of do a hit and run, take the pawn, dash back, and well, white's king is not going to feel safe on the f1 square.
I mean, what if you try to just come forwards to the queen and then with the rook to attack the queen? I mean, just try to play in the most aggressive way you can.
Okay, let's jump back in. So queen takes pawn is a check. It looks like this is bound to be played. What else can Sam do? I think he's going to play this check. You might as well grab a pawn for free. And yes, you have to deal with this pin. Jovanka mentioned the black queen can just go back, park herself back where she came from, defending this knight, defending this pawn. But Simon mentioned maybe the more ambitious option, attacking the white queen. And we're about to see this maybe. This is the current position on the board before this rook move. Where does the white queen go? I'm trying to work it out.
Maybe it goes to g3 here. Maybe this is the problem. Possibly. So I quite like Jovanka's idea, just bringing it back, consolidating, and because you've got then that push in the centre later, you're keeping a lot of ideas alive. So,
so dropping the queen back, maybe pushing one of these pawns later, still with this idea in mind. Also with the idea of bringing the rook the whole way down with a nasty check, hitting the white king.
And can you go a bit Alpha Zero-like as well? Go with the king, one square forward to the 6th row, and then start the chasing.
Yeah, for example, stepping forward with the black king and then pushing pawns forward to hit the white queen. Lots and lots of ideas, and actually we have this on the board. I was just going to show one variation, which I think is very maybe natural or maybe very tempting for lower-rated players, which would be to hit the white queen. It looks aggressive, and after this, you think, oh, I can give a check, hitting the white king. Oh, I can give another check. So many checks. But once the checks dry up, once the white king runs away, you realize, oh, even after a rook trade, too much is hanging. The black queen in the corner is under attack, and the black knight under attack. So you can't just get carried away and only look for checks. Looking for checks is good first, but if they don't work, you have to backtrack. And that's why Sam retreated his queen to a safe square. And now Magnus just stepping forward with the pawn. He's getting ready to create a safe haven for the white king. Still very tense. I don't like this transition for black at all, I must say. But, OK, neither side's king is entirely safe yet.
OK. And the clock is really ticking fast for Sam Shankland. He is now under 5 minutes on the clock. Queens are on the board, rooks are on the board. Is this difficult to play with the clock ticking?
Yep, especially while the kings are open. I mean, those are the positions where we see all the blunders, right? What do you think here? The knight against the bishop, that's the main imbalance. The bishop controls the knight for now.
I'm really liking the bishop, actually. The more I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, yeah, I thought Magnus's idea was a bit too risky, but then I'm thinking genius, as I normally do when I watch Magnus's games. It's like, why are you doing that, Magnus? You're like, yeah, that's why you're the world champ, right? Because that bishop is so phenomenal. Even if it drops back 2 squares, what a lovely diagonal that light square bishop would be on. I mean, we can maybe just highlight the square it could come to at some point. And, OK, well, Sam is pushing forwards. Really risky move there.
Super risky.
I mean,
looks very loose, doesn't it?
It looks incredibly loose. I mean, the first move that comes to mind is just, OK, bishop takes knight.
OK, he doesn't play bishop takes knight. I guess Sam's idea is that maybe he wants to sneak in with the queen this way, or maybe after pawn takes pawn, he wanted to sneak down with his rook and unleash a nasty discovered check against the white king. Magnus is having none of that. He says, OK, no fun for you. Maybe it was good for white anyway, but in the current position, he just tucks his king away to safety. And Yeah, I was going to say earlier, it's the art of doing nothing for Magnus. He kind of provoked Sam into this whole harry the h-pawn push just 5-6 moves ago. Magnus spent 7 minutes, and then he just kind of did nothing. Sam is the one pushing here, but is he worsening his position? That's the question.
Yeah.
As Sam gains space.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks really impressive with those pawns, but what colour square are they on? They're on the light squares. What does white have? Light square bishop. Those pawns are going to be weak.
in the ending, definitely, if he gets to the ending as well, because at the moment, I mean, it looks like certainly White's king is a lot safer. You said the art doing nothing. That sounds like some self-help book, Taoism or something, or something like that. Winnie the Pooh, the art of doing nothing. I'm sure there's a book like that. So yeah, but that'd be a good name for a course.
Isn't there the art of doing nothing?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure there is. I hate these self-help books myself, but still.
I love them. Yeah.
He's doing something though, Magnus. He's trying to break open the centre. Jovanka mentioned these two black pawns, and now he's undermining them, Magnus. So if, for example, the black pawn continues to push forward, now it's Simon's other idea, maybe the white bishop stepping back. Look at this diagonal. Juicy. The white queen is going to sneak in to check this black king.
What would everyone's self-help book be titled then? So if you're going to write a self-help book, what would it be called? So that's a good question. We need some help from Twitter and maybe from the audience. Carl, I might have to come to you soon on this one.
I think mine will be called How to Say No.
Oh, are you good at that or not good at that?
It's a small word, but very difficult to do.
It's the most
And
difficult.
people get in the most extraordinary trouble because they can't say no.
That's so true.
There's my self-help book.
That's actually a good one. I like that. Very good answer. Yeah.
I've actually read that book, Carl.
I honestly
Is there
didn't
actually
know
a
that.
book called The Art of...
I thought I'd just be really clever.
I thought that was definitely unique.
Come on.
Art of saying no. How to say no.
I've never seen
Say
that.
no, yeah, really.
Okay.
And there is an art of basically you just say thank you for the invitation. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and you kind of say no, not this time. So you give them
that's
the
a good
hope
one.
of.
Well, if you're having a meal with somebody and you really don't like what you're eating and they say, would you like some more? Oh, it's very nice. Well, you just get more of the same.
Yeah.
Just say no.
You
And
say I'm a little bit full up, but it was a lovely, delicious meal. I'll maybe have it next time.
Or just say, I'm not very fond of your cookery.
Sorry. Be honest.
No, you won't get invited back.
Oh, and look at the bar in this one. Oh, no, for Sam Shankland.
Yeah, I was trying to say it was a critical moment, and this pawn push we mentioned, it's so risky for Black. Black has abandoned the light squares completely, and I think that's going to come back to haunt him. In the current position, OK, Magnus goes for the open file. I'm slightly surprised. I mean, there were two options that I mentioned. Well, the first one I mentioned, dropping the bishop back, trying to sneak in with the white queen along this diagonal. The second option that I was very tempted by was actually pushing this pawn forward, trying to break through on this square. I wasn't exactly sure how Black was actually going to defend this pawn, utilising a pin, utilising the white queen here, but instead Magnus goes for another probably quite strong option. He's hoping to break through on this line, and it looks like this pawn is very far advanced forward, but if you try to push it, then I think it just gets rounded up. For example, the white rook is just going to come and gobble up this pawn in conjunction with the white bishop. Yeah, it's hard to see a move actually here for Black. You never, ever want to... OK, he's brought his king forward.
But this allows the bishop to retreat with check.
Yeah, I mean, surely White wants to play that anyway, yeah?
Yeah.
Why has he done that? I don't understand.
The white bishop just comes back and gains a move. The Black king has to retreat.
But that's but I mean, this only helps White. I was thinking that was a good move for White anyway. Yeah. So, I mean, the queen can step in and it's game over, isn't it? I mean,
the queen, if it steps in, maybe the Black knight can hop back and defend.
Ooh, even here.
Defending here, but I mean, the white rook comes in.
The rook comes in and then...
I mean,
it's winning for Magnus.
Well, keep an eye on Sam's face when Magnus checks that king. But I mean, it's a really weird move to play, just because there's a light square bishop. I don't understand it.
I think Sam panicked. He's low on the clock. One thing about Sam is, in long chess, he's great, classical chess, because he has time to think. And I saw a post by him on Twitter just last week talking about how he's worked so hard for years on rapid chess and he still can't master it because he panics when he gets low on the clock. And this is a panicky move, putting a king on a light square ready to get checked, giving your opponent time for free to improve their position.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any tips for... OK, and here comes the bishop with a check, and, well, Black is going to be so vulnerable on the light squares.
Running this way, but still on a light square. I mean, the queen can still march forward. OK, first Magnus trades a set of rooks. He's going for the cynical approach. I think he just wants to bring his own rook across and pick up this black pawn. This pawn is an intruder, but it's walked into no man's land. It's got no support, and it might well just drop off. If black tries to defend it with his rook, this allows some nasty queen checks. If black tries to defend it with his queen, then maybe now the white queen sneaks in.
Yeah.
And the black knight cannot kind of gallop over to the defense of its king. It's looking bad for Shankland.
A bad day for Sam. He lost to Mamedyarov, he lost to Jordan van Foreest. He did win against Mishra, but probably, I guess, then a loss coming up here against Magnus.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the momentum's all in white's favour, the clock's in white's favour. It's easy for white to find moves.
And he's shaking his head, Sam Shankland, and clock's ticking down to 1 minute.
This is just Magnus magic. I mean, he got nothing at all out of the opening. But
Queen G4 was so clever, and I mean, it was like
psychologically, it was the kind of killer move because it just provoked Sam to come forward.
Yeah, and that's exactly. Look at Sam's pawns now. I mean, every move that Sam went forward with has become a weakness. The pawn in front of the rook, the pawn opening up the light squares. You're right, Ivanka. It's just really clever. You know, he had that long think, and he just found this amazing idea. Actually,
the art of doing nothing.
The art of doing nothing.
Magnus's key move did nothing, but he provoked Sam into worsening his position.
But it was almost like he understood Sam's weaknesses.
Yep.
And he went and played on that skill. I was thinking about this move, you know, desperately trying to swap off queens, but I was thinking actually white doesn't even have to do that. White can throw in, be a little bit fancy, throwing a bishop check. Yeah. And then once the king moves, you can step backwards with the bishop. And
the king has to defend her queen. The king could not take that white bishop. And the king has to protect the black queen. And yeah, as Ivanka mentions, you can trade queens here and then win this black pawn, the intruder in white's camp, or you can keep the queens on.
And looking at that bishop, it's quite incredible that, from my point of view, it started at f1, b5, then to d3, now g6. The trouble that bishop has caused, when many people might have just swapped it off for the knight without a second thought, and now look at it. It's tremendous. Here we are again, another bishop move.
That bishop's done all the heavy lifting in this game.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
Kicking away the black queen, and next move, that black pawn drops with check. Yeah. The white rook just picks it off now, and you have an attack, and you have an extra pawn.
Yeah.
And you have the better pieces.
There's maybe one danger, right, in the position. You know, black's pieces don't look like they're well placed, but, you know, if he's a bit careless, then maybe they can line up on the H line. That's a little bit of a pipe dream at the minute, but you never know. To be a good defender, I always feel you have to be a good optimist. Well, you have to be an optimist, basically.
I would never play this last move either. I mean, take a pawn with check and attack, or just move a pawn. I mean, it's like, you know...
He's having fun.
He's enjoying himself a bit too much here, I feel, Magnus is, yeah. And the king is trying to scuttle away, but like David said, you're a pawn up with the attack. So
the problem is that black king, no matter where you put it, it's not going to feel entirely safe. Yeah, I mean, now that black king, even though it's made its journey over to the queen side, suddenly remember that white pawn that Magnus pushed all the way up to the 6th rank. What was it, 20 moves ago? Suddenly that white pawn might help an attack against the black king. And, OK, the black knight has blocked this check. White's rook can now just go and take a pawn. Yeah, there we go. The black queen, if it takes the white bishop, then the black knight will fall.
2 pawns and the attack now, not just 1 pawn, it's 2 pawns in the attack. And I mean, you have to try it. Well, I mean, it's not going to work, whatever you try here.
Yeah. There's one important tactic is if black's rook actually comes down to the 5th rank to attack white's queen, then white can actually use his rook and go and capture the black knight. There's some tricks there, but white is going to win a piece. And all the tactics work in your favour. It's no coincidence. It's because you're on the attack. It's because you have the better pieces. White's pieces are coordinated, protecting each other, all pointing in the same direction. Black's pieces are just scattered. Yeah. And here we go. Bishop for knight trade, and Magnus now. Remember that white pawn, I said it, that white a6 pawn, it helps the attack.
Wow.
After all of that,
is he going to resign?
The seeds.
Looks like he's resigning here.
Yeah, it is over. Sam Shankland loses to world champion Magnus Carlsen. So Magnus finishing off the day